Welcome to Insights into Success, where our guest today has a truly remarkable list of achievements. Hollywood actress, voice actor, filmmaker, author, podcast host, and musician. The achievements Katie Chonacas has packed into her life so far are truly incredible. And what's particularly nice is that she has remained grounded and true to her principles. Let's get to know Katie and see if we can work out what exactly are the secrets to her success. I'm looking forward to hearing from you. And I guess what I want to do for a start is I kind of want you just to give us a little bit of a snapshot about who you are. And then I want to take you back in time so that we can understand how you've got to be where you are right now, and then talk about a few other things as well. So could you start off just by give us a bit of a snapshot, because you've got a lot to share. I mean, can you tell me a little bit about, and everyone listening, about who you are and all the things that you have done?
Yeah. First, Paul, thank you so much for having me, and for the viewer and listener for tuning in and holding space with us. It's such an honor to have you here. We honor you and your time, and thank you for being a part of our journey. This is really exciting. I'm excited, very
Cool.
excited to be here. Yeah. Well, I grew up with, Greek Orthodox Christian. So my dad's side of the family immigrated from Greece. And so I understand about those humble beginnings, and it gave me an opportunity to really understand and be around culture and language and food and hymns and chants, like growing up in the Greek Orthodox Church. And not only was I Greek Orthodox, but there was the new calendar and the old calendar, and we were old calendar. Well, we are old calendar. So growing up, in the church, and it's all in Greek, I didn't understand. Like, I knew it was a sacred ceremony and a sacred thing that people would come together to congregate and to understand, like, culture, and kind of like stay together as a community. Although I didn't know the language of community and hymns and languages back then. Like, I was a
Right.
kid, but I grew up in it. And since my body and my soul and my spirit was so sensorially around these things, I was able to, like, observe and identify as kind of as a hypnosis, I guess you would say. Without the language being spoken, it was being felt and heard and seen. And so it kind of journeyed me through my years of traveling the world and being around people who were Italian and French and Vietnamese, and not understanding what they were saying, but hearing the tone, and being able to have,
Right.
like, dinners and lunches, and yeah, being around people who, had the different varieties, and being able to entertain and appreciate all that, instead of being contracted and thinking, this is so one dimensional, this is weird, this is awkward, I'm closed
Yeah.
off. I was able to be open. So it gave
Yeah.
me the opportunity to be really open as a youngster. And then also, my parents were, teenagers having kids. So they were working typical jobs, like 9 to 5, that some people maybe still do, but we were definitely going through a hybrid session in life. But the tradition of working 9 to 5, my
Yeah.
parents were kids providing. We were very independent in this way. So we had a lot of space. I have 3 siblings, and we had a lot of space to kind of explore. And I was into the poets. I was into Greek mythology and Socrates and Plato.
Oh,
And so, yeah, it really gave me, like, that fantasy and that play of, these storytelling, right? These myths, right? And the
yeah.
mysteriousness of what myths are. So that's kind of was, like, in a nutshell, of some of the inspiration of my upbringing.
So where was that? Was that in Chicago?
No, I grew up in Michigan, so
Oh, okay.
outside of Detroit. So
Right.
not too far away, 45 minutes. Around,
Right.
surrounded by the Great Lakes. Yeah.
Right.
And in America, Michigan has 70% of the water of the Great Lakes. So I've heard, being in Hollywood, like, every time I meet someone from Michigan, they're like, really good people, really good people. And in my mind, I'm like, oh, it must be the water, because we're surrounded by the Great Lakes.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
So just to I guess summarize all the things you've done. So you've been an actress in Hollywood,
Hmm.
podcast host, an author, a musician, a speaker. There's not a lot you haven't done, really, is there? I mean, heck, you've done an amazing amount of things in what seems like a fairly short space of time. Incredible.
Thank you. I normally say, like, the when the instead of, like, oh, like, everything you said, what haven't you done? Well, I'm not a skier. I grew up running cross country. So my dad was always, not always, but sometimes, oh, your legs are worth money, because I had a full scholarship for running cross country. So I never went on snowboarding trips. I never got into skiing. So I don't ski, I don't snowboard, but I like hot cocoa and being by the fire,
Right.
But yeah, I'm very grateful for being so open at such a young age. And when I was a kid, there was this little voice in my head, right? And I was really connected with that voice. And it was this little voice, and I knew it was sacred. I knew it was special. And just by like observing other people around me and in the world, what grandma was saying about, like, oh, like how the world is, and then what they would say, and then what the parents would say, what the quote unquote adults would say. I remember just observing these things they would say, and I'm like, I'm not going to be like that. I'm not going to be like that. So I was writing all the time, so I would like remember certain things, because you go through life and you like forget certain things. So I
Yeah.
wanted to remember these things. So it was really important for me at a very young age. I didn't know the word empath. I didn't know the word like HSP, highly sensitive person, which I am.
Yeah.
16 to 20% of the population are HSP. I didn't know that language, but I knew it was sacred. I needed to protect it. And I just knew that. And so I did. I had this like little fire inside of me. And I saw, the way I looked at it was, so many people had their fire out. Like they were so jaded, or they had their fire out, and like their childlike spirit. So I always
Yeah.
wanted to like keep my fire going. And I was interested in color, and I was interested in just asking questions, because when you're a kid, you ask all these questions and your mind's liquid. I think Dr. Bruce Lipton talks about how the mind is liquid, and it's more of like a hypnosis. And then it starts to develop, I think around 7 or 8 around there. And it starts to develop. And then people feel, maybe they feel stupid or small, or we're very primal beings, and we're taught to be domesticated. Don't say
Yeah.
that. Be polite. Don't ask this. Don't ask that. So I thought it was like me being rambunctious, me being a rebel, me not doing what society or what people told me to do. I'm like,
Yeah.
if I don't, I remember making a commitment to myself. If I don't know something, I'm going to ask, even if I sound stupid or look stupid. And I get those looks that I get all the time, even to this day. It's like, I mean, you have Google, right? I mean, we can Google it if we don't know, but at a
Sure.
time of being a teenager, right? And me asking questions, if someone wants to look at me like I am stupid because I'm asking something, like I shouldn't be around that person. Or if I'm going to look
Yeah.
stupid, if they know something that I don't know, I'd rather know than
Yeah.
not
Sure.
know. So, I mean, I might feel or look stupid for like a second, according to like, yeah. So it's kind of
That's
like,
all perspective, though, isn't it? The counter argument to that is that you're the smart one because you're wanting to learn. Instead of pretending you know something, you're putting your hand up and saying that you don't know, but you want to know. You can argue that that's actually being smart. Actually, you're open
thank
to
you.
learning rather than being very closed and more worried about what people think as opposed to the process of learning.
And I think, thank you. And I think because of what I just shared, it's something that's subtle, something that you can't see, but it's an experience that like I just shared and that we're talking about.
Yeah.
But it's the subtle energies of, like, not the materialistic thing that you can hold like a laptop, but it's those kind of choices at a young age that I was like an oak tree, and I had such conviction to make those choices. I think really supported and led me in the other choices as a domino effect with my life and my career.
So what strikes me about what you've told me so far is that you were incredibly aware at such a young age.
Hmm.
A lot of people at a young age just, go along with society and don't
Hmm.
have that awareness that you've just described. And therefore having that determination that you want to protect your inner self, as it were, and not be beaten down by maybe, society expectations. So that's quite remarkable at a young age.
Thank you. Thank you so
So
much. I appreciate that.
So what I want to know as part of this, though, and bearing in mind, I come from a different country, was there any issues or are there any issues being brought up in Middle America, being Greek, and then being a Greek female? And does that complicate things further? I'm interested to hear a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure, definitely. We had little Greek communities growing up. The family three doors down growing up. Greek family, like the movie My Big Fat Greek Wedding. My aunt was like a mile down the road. My yaya, my grandmother, she's right down the road to this day. God bless her soul. She's strong and healthy. She'll be 92 next month,
Wow.
and she's going so strong, which is very exciting, since I'm named after her and she's my best friend.
Yeah.
um Growing up, there was the Indian community, and for and I noticed like and I was friends with some Indian people, and they took me to their homes. I had some Indian food, and for some reason, like I noticed like a lot of the Indian people lived in Canton. Now a lot of them live in Farmington Hills, because my sister had an apartment there a few years ago, and the community is booming in a very specific area there.
Yeah.
And there was African culture, there was definitely different pockets of culture. It wasn't just straight at thought. So it wasn't
Yeah.
like I was I didn't feel like what you would call a quote unquote maybe minority, being super like Greek in this thing. There wasn't any, like, I wish there wasn't any Greek languages. There was French and there was Spanish. Um, it was difficult for me in school. Not because of being Greek though, Greek female. I didn't feel those kind of pressures.
Right.
Um,
So tell me, when you're sort of age 13, at that point in your life, what was your vision for your future, for your adult life? What were your thoughts as to what you wanted to do at that stage?
oh, I mean, what you're saying now is just like the macro of it, and then everything you mentioned a bit ago was the bridge to all those things. And I saw the bridge of all those things being very macro, like Oprah, like
Yeah.
my own TV show, like an empire, like
Yeah.
Madonna, Mariah Carey, Oprah, like having an empire. That's how I
Yeah.
saw it, right? With all those things that you mentioned that I've creatively
Yeah.
have immersed myself into, and then had to crawl and build legs and then uplift them into structures to become content. So I always saw this macro vision of an empire, right? That I've been
Yeah.
individually and independently building. So that's kind of like what I saw for my ultimate vision, being 13, and being a voice for other 12, 13 year olds, because I would be on my floor writing. And like I said, I had that little voice. And so one of the reasons why I started my popular podcast, She's All Over the Place, because I have over 2 decades of not only industry experience, life experience. There are a lot of kids, entrepreneurs, artists who listen to my show. And I am on the podcast. I am that voice sharing those energies of them. I
Yeah.
remember when I was a teenager, I went somewhere and I met this African American model, and she was like a few years older than I was, and she was signed to an agency, and she had the height for it. I didn't. But she had the height to be with a runway agency that I wanted to be with.
Yeah.
And she was in Chicago, and we met in Chicago, and she gave me her number, and she was like a mini mentor, and we had some calls, and she kind of like, put me on the tracks. And I'm like, that's what I want to do for other people. Like what she did for me. Just sometimes, like when you're so connected, people forget how disconnected people are, right?
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
even with the age of technology,
So true.
even with the age of technology, people, there are so many people in the room right now, and they're feeling so isolated and not
Yeah.
being able to connect. So I'm so happy that podcasts are free for, kids to tune into. If I can help out just that one little girl, that one little boy, when they're 12 years old, 15 years old, and I can be a beacon of light or hope of like something with music, independent music, or if it's acting or comedy or drama or like modeling or anything, painting, producing, like anything you can think about, science. Like I want to be that tunnel vision of giving them like 10 gems, and then you run with it. Like, here you go.
Right.
You found the podcast. Here are 10 gems. I can show you the doors. You need to open them. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So cool. So cool.
Yeah. Being a vessel. Yeah.
Yeah.
As
I
you
mean,
are.
it's that willingness to share and to help others. It's got to make you feel good about your purpose in life when you're doing that.
It's so important. And I just feel like even in 2021, with everything that's been, shared, I mean, it needs a lot more. We need a lot more. Like I need to get a lot louder, because there are parents out there who are so hurt that were kids. The kids I'm talking about,
Yeah.
they're all children. Like they're kids. We're all kids. They're kids, and they're hurt and they're dysfunctional. And it's like, oh, poor kids. But child protective services and the system aren't helping these kids who are the poor kids. And then they grow up to be adults, young adults like you and I. And then people start pointing fingers, oh, blaming them and stuff. And then it's like, these are adults who were just the kids. They were the innocent kids. So now they're the adults, and they're still the innocent kids inside. They're still the adults, but they're more jaded. They've gone off to do horrible things that people do when they feel unheard, unloved, unprotected. Like the devolvement happens, and then they're having children, and the kids who are the children, they're teaching their children to disconnect and to hate, and they're teaching them to dismantle and to separate from family, because that's what they were taught, and that's what they know.
Trickle down effect.
Yeah, and it's still happening. And it's like, no, it's like, when I talk to my 13-year-old niece, and I tell her, I'm like, no matter what, if like someone's mad at someone, you're like, that's their thing. It's not you. That's their story. They're projecting onto you. It's not you. I'm like, no matter what, family's number one. Like, be treated well. But if someone has a thing with someone that has not always love unconditionally and keep your heart open, you don't want to plant the seed of negativity. We don't want to plant the seed to put the wedge and for that separation, because then you have 60 to 70,000 thoughts per day, according to Dr. Joe Dispenza, and 60 to 70,000 thoughts per day. And 90% of those thoughts are the same thoughts. But then if you're teaching the child the horrible, bad patterns, that's going to manifest and develop and keep going. Yeah. And it's creating this festering, this monster at 13. And then you hold on to that for 10 years. And that's a lot of trauma you have to dismantle and let go of, So if we can, at a very young age, and starting now, even with where we are, pivot to take the energy, right, the mind, and to pivot it for, it doesn't have to be kumbaya, everything's positive, but we can just hold space for it to not weigh us down either, and call it out when it does, and nourish it when it does, and learn how to do the practices. And it takes work, but hey, and it takes work. So if we can pull the root, earlier on, to not have it be that, then,
it's that much easier. Yeah. It's not, you haven't got the multi layers that you need to peel away, or at least there's not so many layers to peel away to get back to where they need to be. Now, what I want to ask you about is, because I know you've mentioned it in our correspondence, is your cross-country running. From what I understand, that's actually been quite pivotal in your life. So I'm wondering if you could share with us a little bit about that and the impact that that's actually had on your life.
Oh, that's such a sweet question. Okay, thank you. Actually, I love doing gratitudes, and when I have some space, I'll do my gratitudes, and then whoever comes to my heart, my mind, I'll call them and connect with them and pay it forward of gratitude of why I'm grateful for them. And so when I was doing that this morning, I was talking with my dad, and I actually told him, I'm like, Dad, I'm like, just so you know, and then I'll tell him, which I'm about to, share with you, is he was a cross country runner. And I'm so grateful my dad turned me on to cross country running. And it gave me this foresight, and it gave me the understanding of short-term, medium-term, and long-term goals. Right. And so that's why I feel it's very important, because, I mean, this is another story, but to stay focused here, it's very important for children to do sports, because you grow like you're like this oak tree when you do sports, not putting the applied pressure of going off to the NFLs or the big leagues, but just as a child. So I was really in gratitude that, I was a part of cross country, because what you do as an individual affects the whole, such as life, right?
Yeah.
And in and in not only in family and life, in my profession, when I'm on set with 300 people, if I'm on set with 100 people, if I'm on set with 10 people, it's like, it's an energy, it's a vibe. And it's like, when I show up and how I'm behaving and how I'm being, it's going to affect other people. Like, I am so much more now aware of like other people and their families and what they're going through. And even now in the times of now and the hardships and how difficult it's been for a lot of people, like even I think we're all more sensitive and aware of other people's feelings and what they could be going through because we've heard way more stories. So I think it gave a level of compassion. So in cross country, what I did as an individual affect the whole. We got our scores by a team collective whole. But if we were number 1 or number 2 or number 3, it's because the individuals, what they did as an individual. So I learned that lesson at a very young age. And then I call it the 11X method. Grant Cardone has the 10X method. And I'm like, I've been doing this like way before I even knew who Grant Cardone was. And what I would do as a youngster, I would like do 11 things for my business and then 11 things for my personal, right? And so an example would be like, I could send 11 emails. And if I was having a tough day, that was the 11 things I did. But if I'm having a light day, I'm like 11 emails, that goes into one category. Okay, roll calls. Okay, do this. So I would research and I would just call people, and just connect and talk to people and just stay connected. I don't just call people when I want something. A lot of people, they'll only call when they want something. It's like, yeah, it's cool to have that relationship. You can just call someone. It's like when you need something cool. But I also like that. I'm a chatty catty, I guess you would say. And I look at life as like a garden where it's like you sow seeds, you put down the soil, you sow seeds. And then every 3 months you rake away the duds. You look at your beautiful garden, you nourish it. You want to nourish it and water it all the time. And that's my personality type. I like doing it. It makes me feel good to make others feel good. That's what I like to do. That's how I feel good when I can extend myself to make others feel good. We have to make sure we're not overextending ourselves because feeling it's a social responsibility to do that. So we have to make sure that we're actually filling our cup up first. And once we're full, then we can give the overflow, the pouring out to other people, right?
Yeah.
So there's that balance of it. But that's how cross country really like made an impact on my life and in the game of the industry. It's like Barbara Fiorentino, who is an amazing casting director who tested me on Point Pleasant for Fox back in the day. She was partners with Rebecca Mangieri. They cast me on Cold Case. I went out for that show 8 times. They said it was like the most difficult show to cast in Hollywood because the Cold Case files, they would match the now with the past. So like, it had to make sense with the visual, looks of how, the grandmother, the dad, whatever, how they match the people up. Right. I mean, I'm sure times have changed with diversity and people, and doing that, but, also being authentic to a script of how, how things would look in the 1950s when I was a guest lead, and they were going back and forth. But Barbara Fiorentino, who cast me on Cold Case and who, an amazing casting director. Now she's the head of casting for Hulu. You know what I mean? So it's like, the people move around, like as freelance people, as industry people, like someone's an assistant, they're the agents of tomorrow. Whoever's the assistant is going to be Tom Cruise's agent. Well, I think Joel Lubin is Tom Cruise's agent right now over at CAA, but people change, that's just life. Like we're ever evolving and changing. So I really like when I meet people, if I vibe with them or I feel a sensation of something, like I want to nurture and add value and appreciate them and what they're doing if it really excites me. And I get excited very easily. I do.
But I mean, I guess so. But what you're doing though, you're building genuine connections. Whereas, like you touched on before, there's other people that go around the world with very superficial connections. They say that they've got all these friends, but in reality, they're not true friends. They only call upon them when they want something, or they only call them when they want something, which is incredibly superficial. But what you're talking about is that you really value having much deeper relationships with people, relationships of substance as opposed to superficial.
Exactly. And so many people along my journey, I won't name names, but so many people along my journey. And I even had a couple, creative partners, producing partners. And I've had to I've seen them and I'm like, I've had to be able to teach them. You can show them, you can teach them. No. but it also it's a gift. And those people have made me come to realize along my journey, it is a gift, and to not project my stuff onto others.
Yeah.
And undermine myself and by trying to show people how they should be. Like if they ask, or if you want to like enlighten to share with them, that's cool. But
Yeah.
it's like that thing, like you can't teach old dogs new tricks or something like that. People are how they are, but I have showed a few people that, and most people, they don't tell people because they're just on with their lives. They don't want to extend themselves because they don't want to be barked at, or they don't want to like be scolded by their friend because they like that person, they want to be friends. But if you're in business, what I'm doing is around my environment of like who I'm around, that's going to affect like if other people are involved and they're saying like if I'm being one way but my on a partner is being another way, like that's a reflection off of who I am. And I've seen people, they're so short-sighted where they're like here and then they cut it off. I'm like, what are you doing? Like this is just an introductory of like putting down some soil to see if you want to ultimately like shake hand, partner up. Because like Steven Spielberg, I think like he's had the same partner for like X amount of years, cinematographer. It's like, it's really a cinematographer director kind of relationship. When you go to bed with someone, literally it's like a marriage, because you're creative partners with this person, and you don't want a one-off. You don't want a one-off. You want someone you can find, that you can trust, that you can be loyal with. That's why a lot of these structures that are set up and these machines that are set up, because they know they can rely on the cinematographer. When a director shows up, or a cinematographer has they call it crew. They have their lighting guys, the sound guys, and they're reliable people. And then in the industry, if they can't make it, they're like, I got a lighting guy, I got a film guy. And then they're crew guys, and but they all can trust each other. They're all friends in a community. They're scratching each other's back because they know they can trust these people because they're going to show up, they're going to do the job. Because it's not about us, the actor. It's not about the crew people on set. It's about the overall collective of the ad agency, the client, the TV show, the production, the network. Like, I mean, it's not about, it's for you, the person who's being entertained, who wants to go to their job and come home and watch something amazing at the end of the day. Like, we're doing it for you. Like, I mean, we're all in this. We really are all in this together. We all have a part to play. It's like, now
what I want to know, though, because everyone will want to know this, it's an incredibly hard thing to do, but how did you break into Hollywood? How did you manage to do that? Because there's so many, I don't know, millions of people that want to do it and very few do. So what was the key for that? What was the defining moment? How did you do it?
It's a good question. After I was on CSI New York playing with Gary Sinise, amazing. After I was on CSI New York, Ryan Carell, who played my brother, I had two brothers, and his dad's Richard Carell, who's like a big Hollywood director. He's for Disney, for all the TV shows, Full House, like all the TV shows. And he asked the same question. Like, he was like coming to me for advice. I'm like, I'm from Michigan. I have no roots in the industry. I am self-made. Your dad is Richard Carell. You're best friends with Max Spielberg, Steven Spielberg's first son. And you're coming to me. Like, I'm just like, what is going on here? Like, so that really gave me a slice of perspective. Like, anything really is possible, right? But I'm telling you, like, my Greek roots, my cross country background, my conviction, my determination, knowing what I wanted. I didn't drink. I didn't smoke. I didn't do drugs. I was an adolescent. So I kind of got it all out of the way when I was a kid. So when I went to Hollywood, as a model, I was working for the auto shows. And so I was a narrator. Have you ever been to an auto show?
No.
Okay. Maybe it's just in America.
But I think it's in a big American thing, because you've got all the big car companies over there. We're only a little country, so we don't have some of those events.
Okay. Well, one time you'll have to come to an auto show. But so yeah, in America, growing up, outside of Detroit, Michigan, there was the auto shows, and it paid very well. And I learned so much about the different vibes and breeds of humans, because I was going to Boston, and I was going to Arizona. And so working in the auto show, I was in front of thousands of people with the microphone, utilizing my voice.
Sorry, can I interrupt there? Just how old were you? Just so we got
19.
a perspective on it. 19. Okay.
19.
Right.
I was 19 years old. And my first auto show was the T-Bird, when they brought the Ford T-Bird back, and there were 6 of them, and I was by the cherry red one. And then this limited edition one with Neiman Marcus. It was a silver one. It was like limited edition only at Neiman Marcus. And so and I was doing that auto show. And then the following year, once you're in, it's like Hollywood. It's like the auto show circuit. It's like so difficult to get in, but once you're in, I won a beauty pageant, Miss Michigan Teen Motor City. And, one of the judges, then I had the opportunity to do the auto show. And then after that, because I was already in the circuit, once you like do your first one, kind of like CSI, once you do your first one, you're like in it. Once you get like your first job again, if you've been off for a while, then it's like a domino effect of working again. Like, oh, she's on this set. You wrap, you then go to another set. You're in the mix, right? Yeah. So I was doing the auto show, and then the next year I had like 5 different companies offer me jobs, right? And I went with Hyundai, and it was like a newer company from, I hope I'm saying it right, Japan. And they came over, and they were brand new, and they were pairing very well. And my whole suit was like Saks Fifth Avenue, and I had these like Ferragamos, like that he specifically designed for Audrey Hepburn, and I still have them to this day. They're completely vintage, since they're over 10 years old. They're completely vintage. I'm kind of like half playing here, but so the gift was, while I was doing the auto show, there's 3 to 5 day shows in smaller markets. And then the bigger markets, there's LA, Boston, Detroit, Chicago, all these places. And so I had the choice, the luxury. And what I do, because I'm very intense person, I chose, and smart, I guess, because this is what I thought would be better for me. This is my way of thinking at the time was, I'm in Michigan. I can be anywhere in America. They fly me to anywhere I want to be. I'm away for 10 days in major cities, like working as a model, speaking about, the auto shows and connecting with the people. But then I have the rest of the month, 20 days to be in Los Angeles in class, reading books, networking, researching. I would go out to the nightclub scene, and I wasn't, like I said, drinking or anything like that.
Yeah.
And I would go network and talk to people. But there's something called iMovie database, IMDb. And you can look, once someone gives you their card and you meet them, you can go out home and you can look to see who they are and, what they've done, if they're fluff and buff or if they're the real deal, right?
Yeah.
Kind of raking the garden, right? And finding out who's who. So the opportunity was being able to leave Michigan by the company, being able to live in California. It gave me the opportunity to move to California to root there while still being employed in America, but then getting involved in acting classes. And I got representation, and so those 20 days when I wasn't doing the auto show, I would just be doing the mailings. That's what they did back then. I send out 80 mailings. I got like 7 calls. But all you need is one. And I got representation for commercial right away. I was going out 4 or 5 times a day for commercials. It was insane of how much I was going out for commercials. It was insane how busy it was. And then I finally got a boutique TV and film agency, and all you need is one. And then once you're in like I said, once you get connected and you get one, then you're in the synergy of it. Then you're auditioning, and then you get with better representation. People who have more clout, people who have more relationships, you kind of discover of who you are. You just stay very consistent and focused. The most important thing is doing great work. So I would be studying with William Alderson, the Meisner technique, for 2 years. I was always getting coached for projects, and I was going for it. And then, and then I tested my first pilot season for 3 pilots. And my first like big time role was CSI New York. Yeah.
Wow. That's just amazing. But I mean, the thing that strikes me about you is you've got so much energy. You're coming across, you've got so much energy. So when you talk about those 20 days, I can imagine you're like going around just in all these different directions with so much energy. And whereas some people might have the same opportunity, but they don't do half of what I think you've probably done. It just, some people you meet and they're low energy, and other people are high energy, and
Yeah.
you're definitely high energy, and I can see how that would have translated to you achieving a lot in a short space of time.
Yeah. And what I learned along the way when you say that is, the thing about having the high energy, it's exciting, right? And you want to share that high energy. Some people think it's like bragging or insecurity by oversharing or sharing too much, and those people are judging, and there's different kinds of breeds of people out there. And sometimes you're excited and you're talking about things because you're manifesting and you want them to happen, and you're sharing it because when you're sharing it, maybe someone will be like, hey, I want to be a part of that. If you're not sharing it, people don't know. But if you are sharing it, then people know. It's the fine line of sharing and knowing when someone's interested, and then sharing and knowing someone's just getting entertainment out of you, that they're just like kind of secretly making fun of you. Because a lot of the way is like, oh, if I'm their entertainment, let me be their entertainment. But being aware of if they're making fun of you, like being aware if you're being made fun of, knowing when someone's really interested or if you're being made fun of, because no matter what, it's energy, right? So being able to conserve and protect that energy. And it's been so difficult. You hear not to talk about things till they happen. I have an analogy about that, but to be mindful, because it can be very depleting. You have to protect your energy, and it's a sacred thing. I mean, a quick example is, I guess I found out along the way that a lot of women, it's common that they miscarry, So a lot of times I found out the reason why they don't say anything to the first trimester is if you lose the baby. So right. So I look at it as like, when I'm starting something new now, something new, only people who know about it need to know about it. Otherwise, I don't talk about it, because it's like, it's a white canvas, and it's this energy, it's this chi, it's thing that's birthing. And if you share it, it could dismantle, and people can like put their energies on it where it's not powerful enough so it dissipates. So I think it's the same thing when you're wanting to start something. Like, it's cool to put it out into the ethers in a safe space, knowing that it's being manifested in a great way, but being careful and mindful of the judgmental people out there who say, you heard so many times, oh, it can't be done, no one's going to do that. No, it won't be done how it was, because it's already been done, but it's going to be done in a new way of my vision that you have no idea about, because it's being manifested, and I'm creating the opportunity, and I have the vision. And how could you really understand my vision if you are not in my mind and I'm not in your mind? I see an idea of the path of where you want to go, but I'm excited to witness like where you're going to take it to. Right. So I've had to learn hard ways to, not, because I get so excited, but not to share it, to protect my own white canvas. Otherwise, people are blah, blah, putting their blah on it. It's like, I don't need your blah, but also you're the one sharing it. So you're attracting that energy to get the blah. So it's like, sometimes, lastly, it's like with your mom and your dad, or if you're a partner, you're sharing something, and because you're excited, but if they're not going to be reciprocal in it, they're going to take more energy by you having to explain what it is. And it dissipates from the excitement. So with being in Hollywood, I'd imagine that you have had a lot of rejection in that, because obviously you don't get every role that you audition for. How did you find that? How did you find, going constantly to all these auditions and having to accept that, your chances of getting them were probably quite low at times? I guess in a simple term would just be science. It's just data. Instead of being emotional about it, keep my emotion for the craft and the work. Otherwise, there's like a saying people say, I don't know if you've heard this, where it's like, managers, they're looking at more of the cross-country mentality, long-term, short-term, medium-term, for your career overall. Like, don't do this, it might affect you later. An agent, they're representing you. It's like they're taking a thing of spaghetti and throwing it against the wall, and they're just saying who sticks, right? That's what agents kind of do. They're like, boop, 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 boop. They're just targeting, putting you out there for projects and seeing like what sticks. That's what I've heard, ever since I was a kid growing up in Hollywood anyway. So I kind of just look at it like that when I get all these opportunities. Like, I was up for a straight to series project that's happening right now. And I was out for, I just went out for another straight to series for AMC. And then just a couple days ago, I went out for an Amazon Prime series,
Cool.
and then I just also went out for Grey's Anatomy, which is a recurring role on Grey's Anatomy. So um, I'm so grateful to have a team, that I put myself in a position to have a team who can pitch to get me these opportunities.
Yeah.
And then it's like what I said earlier, it's like a matter of like, because I took a break from on-screen acting for a while,
Yeah.
I'm in my voiceover booth. I do voiceovers every day. I do awesome voiceovers every day. It's so fun. Video games, commercials, animation, everything. But being on screen again is my ultimate goal, and that's what I'm focused on. That's my target right now. And some people will be like, oh, don't talk about it, don't say it. But no, I feel like it's empowering to talk about it, to share it, because I've already done it. It's what after I've experienced everything, it's what I'm doing again to become a household name. Like, I've made it twice, and then it was like a carrot dangling, and I ran. But like this time, like, I'm a young adult. I'm not the 13-year-old girl. Like, it's past me too. It's past all those things that are opened up with mental health and being a mental health advocate and sharing and empathizing and evolving and learning. And, so it's like me being in my vessel of knowing myself, like, from within, and I feel like it's an actor's journey isn't just like a straight shot, right? Like a bullseye. Like, I was straight out of the gate as a bullseye, and I did very well. And I got on all these TV shows. I was in all these movies. And then after I was on all these TV shows, and after I was in movies with De Niro and Pacino and Nicolas Cage, like, after that, to me, success is measured. For me, I made it. And then I left and I went and sailed on the south of France for the summer for 3 months. You know what I mean? Like, and I would just travel the world, because for me, like, I already made it. Like, everyone has different goals. And I also feel like with the true and trieds of Hollywood, and then reading scripts and the rejection of going out for projects, it's kind of like rotors, like brakes on a car, right? It's like, if you don't change them, they're going to get rusty. If they just sit, they're going to make that noise. Like, they need that pad, just like humans. Like, we need that pad of rest and rotation. And trust the divine femininity and the divine moments of being aligned, right? So I felt like I needed to really, like, kind of let it all go. You have to, like, let it all go, and then come back to it like a fresh, with like a new fresh breath of air and like canvas. So now when people see me, I'm like rebranding myself. I've done this body of work. They know I'm a talented actor. What have you been doing in the meantime? Producing my own projects, right? During the pandemic in March, I created couples therapy, a lockdown comedy improv web series. I took it and put it in the film festival circuit. It has over 25 official selections. We won over 16 awards so far. I won best director. I won best director and best actor for 3 so far. And it's in the circuit, and it keeps coming with more accolades because of, what we created during the pandemic. And now I realize, like, oh, that was great going out as an independent, doing these projects through the union, 2 web series I produced, 2 short films I produced, because we were encouraged as actors to go out and produce your own content. But when I did that, I was so focused on it that it dismantled my representation. And so I wasn't going out for projects because I wasn't getting the projects I wanted to be booking. So I made them on my own. And with that being said, circling back around, being able to rest and totally get centered, now I'm focused on, hey, team, cross country, what I do as an individual affects the whole. Having a team, letting my team get me on these network series, it's going to help me go a lot more further with my ultimate macro vision of who I am and what I want to do as a ripple effect to empower other people and enrich and play and have fun, and be working, as a household name. It's going to happen with a team. I can't do it all on my own. So I've learned that along the way too. And I can still produce my own projects and stuff. But hey, let this team and the machine that's already working of the entertainment industry align. And there's so many cool streaming independent projects now. There's so much more opportunity, and you can be anywhere in the world. You don't have to be in one place. You just need to be vaccinated and be union, to be able to, be, hired in these locations. So it's just, it's a part of what's happening. So I'm on board.
So there's a couple of things I want to touch on there. One thing is I really, like what you were saying before, insofar as I talk about it to people about being in an emotional state or being in your analytical state. And what I was really impressed about what you were talking about before was that with going to your auditions, you're very much taking it from an analytical point of view. And we know that when we're in an analytical state, we'll make good decisions because there's no emotion. It's just all based on the facts. Where we get caught is making decisions when we're emotional or in an emotional state. And full credit to you, because when you're going for all those auditions, it'll be pretty hard not to be in your emotional state and take it personally when you get rejected. But if you are able to do what you've described that you've done, to be in an analytical state, then it doesn't hurt you. This is just the process. It's no big deal. Carry on. And that's what you did. So amazing. That's really amazing you've been able to do that. And I'm sure the more people that could do that, the more success that they would have going through that same process. So really, really impressed.
Thank you so much. I just want to share a little tidbit of what you said. I really appreciate those words. Thank you. Being in the analytical state, I've on the journey learning myself and the beasts of life in the business, I've had to learn what I do is going into an analytical state of like research, preparing for the character, and then being able to dismantle and, nourish properly. Like literally, what happens is when you go into the casting director's office or self-taping because you're opening your heart, then you're dismantling analytics, and the last thing you're doing is being in your head. You have to be so in your gut, so in your heart, so in your emotional space, that what I had to do to learn was, because after the audition, it's like, put a pin in it, put me into a jacuzzi, into a heated sauna, because I could be a wreck depending on the role, because you're not in an analytical state. You're in a very vulnerable state. So I've had to learn the tool of, it's called the transition. So if I'm sitting at Warner Brothers, auditioning for something afterwards, it depends. Like if I'm going to meet up with someone to do something, it's been a while because of the pandemic, or let's just say a self-tape and I'm home, before I can go and meet up with someone and just I need to have that transition space, my emotional transition, to feel it out, to be able to gently let go of the character and the emotions.
So with the diversity of what you have done, do you think that has added to your depth of view, and therefore will translate that whatever you decide to focus on, you've got so many more experiences now to draw upon, which potentially will impact and be advantageous to you in whatever you choose to do, because you've done so many things. I mean, to write a book on poems, that's no easy feat. You've recorded music, and you've got your film production. I mean, you're getting all these experiences from quite not dissimilar but different angles. Do you feel that that's really been beneficial for you in terms of you as a person and your career?
What you just said is like spot on. It's one of the reasons why I took a break from on-screen acting. I just felt like I needed more life experience. I was celibate for 7 years. I didn't have a boyfriend for almost a decade. I was so strict with my Greek roots and my personality that I went into Hollywood, and I mean, I was there for a year and a half before I even kissed a boy. You know what I mean? Like I was so strict that I wasn't involved in dating and relationships because I didn't want to be known as someone else's girlfriend, or if someone else, I wanted to make it on my own. And my book is called A Lover's Fairy Tale.
Cool.
Yeah. And these are amazing pieces I wrote over 10 years of traveling the world. And then during the pandemic, it's called A Lover's Fairy Tale. So you can go to loversfairytale.com. You can put in your email. I have an automation set up where I gift you, I'll send it to you, but I gift you a playlist of A Lover's Fairy Tale, and it shows my body of work where I invested, self-produced, from the top down, the cinematographer, the hair, the lighting, the makeup, the location, everything, where I self-produced these spoken word music videos. For over a decade, and I put them into a playlist, and so you can put in your email and I can send it to you. The book's on Amazon and Barnes and Noble, loversfairytale.com. And it's all about like fantasy and play and whimsical and different places in the world, that I travel to. My birthday's 11/11. I love the number 11. So I decided for my first poetry book, 11 pieces. And then my friend, Robert Sturman, who's an amazing international artist, this is some work we did together during the pandemic with the original Polaroid that was discontinued in 2001. So they're super
Wow.
rare. They're photos, but they look like paintings. And he took special
Wow.
tools and he carved on them. And
Yeah.
yeah, it was pretty cool, pretty amazing. And during the pandemic, normally I'm like, where's a place in the world I've never been, like a kid in a candy store that I
Yeah.
want to go, or being at TKTS and on Broadway and, going 15 minutes before show and getting the tickets for half the price, all the seats that are left. And it's like, you get them, all these shows and you go see Broadway. So I was like, I'm not traveling. I haven't been on a plane. And I'm like, what's one thing? So I pivoted my energy. I pivoted my thought. I pivoted the question. What's one thing that I haven't done that I've always wanted to do?
Yeah.
And I remember being a preteen wanting to be a self-published poet. And they
Wow.
didn't have Amazon back then. They didn't have self-publishing that I knew of. I don't even think they had Google then, right? Or YouTube. They didn't have any of those things. And so I'm like, I've always wanted to be a self-published poet. So for my birthday, that's what I'm going to do. So that was 11/11. And then I'm like, I'm going to give myself a win. Then next question was when? By the spring. So I'm going to give myself a few months to do the research, to figure out head to
Yeah.
toe what needs to be done.
Yeah.
And then it was World Poetry Day. And so I'm like, March 21st, World Poetry Day, I'm going to release my first poetry book on World Poetry Day. And so I did. And that really taught me, one of the experiences that it really taught me is the imposter syndrome, right? And wanting
Yeah.
to do something and just do it. Like start
Yeah.
messy and just go for it and
Yeah.
make it happen. Right? And don't
Yeah.
and anything that gets in the way, just pivot. Drop it, the expectation of what you wanted or how you want it to be, pivot, make it work.
Am I understanding you that the whole concept of imposter syndrome, that you basically just kind of didn't let your mind have the time to really dwell on that? You just like, I'm just going to do it and
Hack
just
it.
put that all to the side, because that's a real issue for a lot of people. For most people, in fact, is that they want to do something, but they think, well, who am I to do that? I'm nothing special. Why should I do it, or what gives me the right to do it? But your attitude was just to go and do it and don't even think about that.
So a couple things. You say, who am I to do that? Who am I not to?
Nice. Yeah.
Right? Since I was a kid, I'm Greek, so Nikki is a Greek word to win, victorious people. Something, just do it, just hack it and just get it done. Like, and just start small. And those 10 little small things add
Yeah.
up to a big gold mountain, So just, it's important. And it's like, oh, okay, well, then if you want to do something, someone's gonna say, oh, I have this whole thing. And it's like, okay, let's just dissect it. What's one thing you can do right now that's the goal to that one thing? Like, you know what I'm saying? Just like
Yeah.
break it
Break it down.
down.
Yeah.
Break it down and
Yeah.
just one step in front of another. And we're gonna have up, downs, down days, all that stuff, but just one step in front of another, just to be in action. That's the thing as an actor, we're in action, we're acting, we're in action. It's a verb. Like we need to be in action. And
So does that mean, I take it from that though, that you're very conscious of that? So you try and surround yourself with people of the right energy, of positive energy that are going to support you rather than bring you down?
honestly, there's all different kinds of people. So there's tools and techniques. For example, if you know how someone is, instead of talking to them for 45 minutes, maybe I'll talk to them for 10.
Right.
Like if you love someone, you care for them,
Yeah.
we're going to be around these people. I'm not going to not talk to you. You can love people from afar.
For you, you presumably had lots of challenges in your life. What has been the key for you overcoming your challenges? What's been the secret for you to overcome them?
I think I'm still overcoming things, it's a part of it. It's but it's always having more compassion for myself first when I show up to whatever it could be. For example, if you know, something's not right. Like I said, start messy and like, oh, that my team did their best. I did my best. Let's just keep going.
Yeah.
Before I would just like take it down,
Yeah.
like be raw and like be so mad at the person because I'm being so hard on myself. So learning not to be so hard on myself. My 100, when I get to my 100, I tell people like, your 100, whatever your 100 is, because we're all different with our energies, whatever your 100 is, go to your 80. When you're at your 80, that's kind of your brake pad to be like that, have that be your 100, to leave that 20% of space to take a bath or read a book or just do
Yeah.
nothing, sleep more, like whatever, just like leave that
Yeah.
space. The imposter syndrome, the starting messy, doing the hacks, definitely, catching myself, calling myself out, making it interpersonal, challenging game for myself.
Yeah.
When things are happening, instead of being so serious, if I'm like, I check in, if I'm like, yo, I'm being very serious about this right now, to loosen it up, be aware that I'm being serious about it, be aware that this is a serious project I'm going into before I actually go into it, so I can remind myself when I'm in it, like I need to create breaks for myself. I need to grab some green juices. I need to maybe have my schedule free for the rest of the afternoon or the next day, because I know I'm doing a massive project for this hour and this day. I'm allotting my time, my hours for this. So to be able to go to like a Himalayan salt room afterwards, to sit in salt, for 45 minutes afterwards, to do a yoga class afterwards. So making sure what I'm putting out, I'm also putting back in, and then making a choice to put in more than what I'm giving out.
Yeah.
So I'm really full on the inside. So I'm not, they say, the era of burnout, right?
So there's three things that jump out at me that really stand out for keys, I think, to your success. I'll see what you think. One is your ability to distinguish between your emotional state and your analytical or intelligent state, and able to be in your intelligent analytical state at important points of time. So that to me stands out. I think the second thing that stands out is your energy. You've got this ability you've got so much energy to throw at something, and if you throw enough energy at a problem, you're bound to work it out, you're bound to solve it. And then the third thing is your open-mindedness, your willingness to look broadly rather than narrowly at things, and therefore able to see solutions. Often people are they're so fixated at looking at something, they don't step back and realize there's another way just over to the left or to the right. What do you think? Do you think that have I nailed that at all? Do you think I'm on the right track?
1000. 1000. I think the number one of the analytical mind, connecting to the third one of being so open. When I'm so open, I'm calculated open. Even though I'm so open, as long as it's in safety, as long as I'm not going to hurt myself or someone else. I mean,
Yeah.
this is a very short story, but I'm not going to go on a motorcycle. You know what I mean? Unless I'm on set and I have insurance and like I'm wearing a helmet and this person's a licensed person who's like super protected. Like they're not going to the union isn't going to put me in harm's way. They're going to get a specialist and they're going to wear a helmet. It's not going to really be me. I will go on the motorcycle and I will have a good time as long as it's in safety measures. I'm not going to go jump off a mountain. Okay. Like, even though I love adventure. So like, even though I'm so open, I also have, like, under the guidelines of, valuing my life and protecting myself, and having a responsibility that, I need to be aware of myself and the choices I make, because it affects other people. They will miss me if something happens, but when I was a kid, I was in Detroit. Oh, as a kid, I was going to all these rave parties underground, and I was like hanging around, like, just walking around and without a care in the world. But I didn't understand the value that I understand now. I didn't understand the risk of that I was putting myself in, when it was like, the number one murder capital of the world. And I was just like in Detroit, like, spending time there. And I thought it was totally fine in my bubble. And yes, I was protected, and yes, I was safe. And, I'm very grateful for all those things. And looking back now, I was like, oh my goodness, like I put myself in those situations, not and that's what it was then. So what it was then isn't what it is now. And so being
Yeah.
able to dismantle and see for what it is now and then pivot, right? So like everyone can relate in their own terms and circumstances to dismantle what they can dismantle. Like you said earlier, be grateful for what you do have,
Yeah.
right? Because the other part of it is we don't realize, like there's this one quote where it's like this guy has everything and then loses his health, and the only thing he wants is his health, and money can't
Yeah.
buy that. Like
No.
the opportunity to be living on the planet is like to be human being. Like that is such a gift within itself, just to be a human, to be listening to this podcast, to be watching this podcast is such a privilege. It's like
Yeah.
such a gift to have the space to be able to like attune and be here. Like that's why, it's such an honor to, for someone to like actually hold space and be here. Because Gary Vee says, I was at a Worlds event. It's Worlds with a Z. I was in Hilton and Highland at a Worlds event one time, and Gary Vee was the keynote, and he said one idea between two people like you and me, if we have an idea, he's like, it's worth $4 million. That's what he said, right? This was like 3 or 4 years at a Worlds conference, and I don't know what that one idea would be now, but that's what he said then. But he said the number one most valuable thing, more than money, is our attention. We only can focus on one thing at our time. One thing. To attune and to be here is such a gift. And we're putting our energy and our attention here. It's the number one most valuable thing, more than money. And so I'm aware of that, and I honor that, because we can be anywhere. So then we can start asking the questions like, where are we putting our antenna, our focus? And then and then journal, where do we keep putting our attention? Where do we keep putting it? Because if not most people, but a lot of people, if they're stuck, if you write it down, they're doing the same
thing.
pattern. Like you were saying earlier, like the control over our choices, how we're feeling. A lot of people are just unaware of the same old, especially not only action, but in communication with the people we're surrounding. We have 12 main chakras, right? 7 main chakras in our body. And the 8th and 9th chakra is what maybe some people have heard of as the aura, right? Our aura, which is about 4 to 8 inches outside of our proximity. It's an energy. It's a vibe. You're walking down the street, you feel something. Our heart has over 40,000 neurons in it. It's very intelligent. So we're walking down the street and I'm, sensing something, or we're sensing something. It's like a vibe, a vibration. It's a vibe that our antennas are telling us, right? It's emotional intelligence telling us like something about that.
For sure. And I guess that's another thing with you is your constant drive for self-improvement. And that includes the people around you. Now, I'm just conscious we could talk for hours. It's been amazing. I just want to wrap it up with one final question for you, and that is, you've done so much so far. What's next for you? What's the future look like for you? I mean, you've done so many things that so few people will ever do in their life. So what's your goals for the future?
So thank you for caring and asking. So I love being expressive and silly, and I love color. So I would love to be a lead on an animation TV series working nonstop as a voiceover artist and being on set working, on a TV show, on a recurring role. And then in the near future, starting a family of my own, quality over quantity. And, and I've been so attached to my own family, and I've learned about family, and I've learned all these things along my journey. And I really felt it was important for me to have children later on in life, because I saw a lot of people who were putting the stuff onto their children. And I just knew it was such a gift to be here that I wanted my cup to be 1000% full before I had a child of my own. so I would know that I did everything I needed to do as a gift for my sacred self being, so that when I, provide an opportunity for another being to be here, that I can fully immerse myself energetically into that. So that will be the next continuum of the journey and cycle of life. If it's meant to be for me, if I'm,
Yeah.
supposed to,
Yeah.
birth children, so be it for the highest good. But, it's so cool because when I'm around my niece and nephew and they're playing the video games or watching the animations, these are things I audition for. These are things I go out for. So it's like they go hand in hand. I can still kind of like
Yeah.
be in entertainment and watch and learn while, growing a family in the near
Yeah.
future, God willing.
Yeah.
And I love the most famous artist. My friend Maddie Moe created the most famous artist community, and they're
Yeah.
building he purchased a whole compound in New Mexico recently, and he's building a whole new world for artists there. So I want to be an advocate and be a part of the
Wow.
TFMA community and spearhead. Maybe in Detroit I could be the curator to take artists around to the famous museums and the projects downtown. But anyway, I can contribute and be a part of that. I'm a complete art head. So those are my three main focuses. Yeah.
Well, that's pretty cool. And one thing's for sure in my mind is whatever you set your mind at, you're going to do it. So full credit to you. Amazing energy and yeah, great insight into what you can achieve in life through application and yeah, just going out there and doing it, not being held back by the imposter syndrome. So full credit to you. So thank you so much for the interview. I really appreciate it. It's been great. And as I said, I'm sure I could talk to you. There's so many topics you're going on about. I think, okay, we're going to try and reel this in because otherwise this will be a 5-hour long interview. But yeah, I've definitely learned something from it and appreciate your time. So thank you so much for that.
Yeah, we're friends now. We're connected. So in the near future, we can have another conversation and
Absolutely.
the questions and the interests. And, I'm so grateful for you and your community and, to be a part of me and my world. It really means a lot. So I hope I really added value and insight, in an ethical kind of way for other humans. So, we can explore this journey together. It really, really means a lot to me.
No, thank you for that. And I think, as I say, there's a lot of people out there that, young people that aspire to do what you've done. And, it's great to hear your perspective and to hear that despite everything you sort of you've held on to your beliefs, your morals, and you didn't let that compromise you and what you've done. And I'm sure a lot of people can't say that. So full credit to you for that as well.
Yeah, thank you. I guess lastly I'll say on that is, I'm not perfect by any means. I've made choices of myself that maybe I'm not proud of, or that, everyone has skeletons in their closets
Yeah.
where they're still shamed and blamed or whatever, but that's a different time and a different place. But the one thing that's very prolific, I feel, is that important for the young artists and the people any age or whatever, but it's like do not sell your dream for, like for if someone's giving you a bigger, better deal or telling you they can make something happen for you,
Yeah.
and it's all fluff and buff. I've seen so many actors, boys and girls. I've seen so many artists, musicians where, they're sleeping with someone for something. They might have a role. A lot of them don't get the role. Like, there's all that stuff that happens. And we're only cheating ourselves. You know what I mean? We're only cheating ourselves when we do something like that. We think we're cheating by getting ahead or something like that. But at the end of the day, it's your journey. That's why I was so strict on mine. I had to learn to not be so strict, but ask questions, like ask a lot of questions. And when you have your dream, it's your dream. And we shouldn't have to sacrifice in an unethical kind of way. We do not need to sacrifice what we want in an unethical way because of someone else who could be preying on you by their own insecurities and their own things that they were taught. They have their structure that isn't yours. So be very careful. We don't need, just because someone can give us that opportunity or that deal, to jump at it. Like there's a lot of the stuff that's in between, that's unseen and unknown. So take your time and be patient. instead of being so desperate for the idea of the opportunity, you know, because
Yeah.
a lot of people most of the time are not satisfied and pleased with the outcome.
Yeah. And
It's more
that's,
important to have the integrity and to have the dream as a fantasy instead of it being deflated and toppled upon of because of other humans, you know?
yeah. Oh, that's a really, really good piece of advice. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'll let you go. Thank you so much. We'll be in touch and we'll stay in touch. But it's been a real honor and a pleasure. And thank you for your time.
Thank you, Paul. I appreciate you. Thank you so much.
All right. Well, you take care, Katie. Nice to talk to you.
You too.
All
Bye.
right. Bye-bye.